This video contains the solutions to the Lesson 6-4 Day 1 assignment. An upcoming lesson involves adding and subtracting fractions. Fractions can only be added or subtracted if they have the same denominator. So if you have a math problem with two fractions that don't have the same denominator, you have to have a procedure for changing those fractions to have a common denominator. And that's what this lesson in the book is about. Now the step 1 and step 2 here on the screen, this applies more to tomorrow's assignment. So I'm going to cross this out. We'll keep that in mind for tomorrow. What we have going on today is a fraction and then another fraction started but with a missing numerator that we have to figure out. And the idea here is, what do you do to the first fraction to create this new fraction where the denominator is 28 instead of 4. So how this connects to the upcoming assignment is, if we figure out that we want the denominator to be 28, then how do we change a given fraction to have that desired denominator? So what do you multiply by 4 in order to create a denominator of 28? And you make the decision that you need to times by 7. 4 times 7 is 28. Then multiply the numerator by 7 as well, and you will create 21 as the numerator of the new fraction. The fraction 3/4 is equal to the fraction 21 over 28. The fractions are equivalent to each other, but they have different denominators. Now number 3 is the same idea. Let's say you're starting with the fraction 5x over 3, but you decide that you want to find an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 18. So the question is, how do you change from a denominator of 3 to a denominator of 18? Well, you would decide that you would need to times by 6 and do that in the top as well. 5x times 6 is 30x. Now in number 11, we're starting with the fraction 7 over n minus 3, and we want to figure out what fraction is equivalent to that, but it has this new denominator. The denominator is in factored form. One factor is n minus 3, the other factor is n plus 2. Now go back to your first fraction. You already have the denominator n minus 3. What do you need to multiply that by to create the desired denominator, which has n minus 3 and n plus 2? Hopefully, visually, it's obvious that what it's lacking is the n plus 2. If you multiplied it by n plus 2, that would create the desired denominator. And so once you've made that decision, now multiply the top by n plus 2. And you will find out that the numerator of our new fraction is 7 parentheses n plus 2. Now number 15, it's the same idea. We're starting with a fraction 4 over a minus 1, and we want to find out what fraction is equivalent to that, but has this new denominator 2a minus 2. Now 2a minus 2 is factorable. There's a GCF of 2. So right underneath, I'm going to rewrite it in its factored form. 2 parentheses a minus 1. The reason you rewrite it in factored form is it helps you figure out what you need to multiply by to make the transformation. Our first factor already has the a minus 1, but what it's missing is the 2. So if we multiply by 2, that would create the new desired denominator. And then multiply the top by 2 as well, and you discover that that missing position is an 8. All right, number 17. Our first fraction has x plus 1 in the bottom, but our new fraction has x squared minus 1. That's a difference of squares, and it factors as x plus 1 times x minus 1. Now, what factor is in our desired denominator that is not yet in our starting denominator? And hopefully you realize that it's the x minus 1. So if we take that first denominator and multiply by x minus 1, it would create our desired denominator. And multiply by that same thing in the top, and we discover that the missing part that we're trying to figure out is 2 parentheses x minus 1. So this skill that you practiced is going to become helpful on tomorrow's lesson, and especially in the lesson after that when we add and subtract fractions.